All right. Servus and welcome everyone to our second Neco Community Conference in 2023. As always, this community conference is about me presenting our latest quarterly numbers, which are looking pretty good. And then in the sessions afterwards, we have time for question and answers to talk a bit about the roadmap and any questions you might have. So last month, actually in March, we had a couple of really interesting headlines in our newspaper. Normally, I don't read newspaper that much, but last month it was really interesting. And the main news that we saw was about financial problems. It started with the Silicon Valley Bank, which collapsed in March, and then other banks which followed, Signature Bank, First Republic, and last but not least, Credit Suisse. So what we're seeing here, or what happened here, raised globally the fears of a collapse in the financial system. And this is something that, in my opinion, is not unexpected. It's something that was actually predictable. And I want to just quickly explain the reasons and then also talk a bit about how we as Neco deal with this situation. So what led to this collapse was a series of events. It started 2020 with Corona. In my opinion, that was the real time-changing moment in our history. And because of Corona, we had a recession and we had severe issues with the supply chains. And since the last financial crisis in 2008, so 15 years ago, our central banks have been pumping a lot of money into the market. The interest rates were so low, like zero, more or less, for the last decade. And all the players got used to very low interest rates. But due to the recession and then the supply chain issues caused by Corona and lately also by the Ukraine war, prices have gone up tremendously. So what we saw last year was what's called hyperinflation. An inflation rate of over 10%, the highest inflation rate I've ever experienced in my entire life. And so the only mechanism that we have more or less to deal with this inflation is for the central banks to raise interest rates. And that's what they did. They tried to slow down inflation by raising interest rates, which has then affected the banks very negatively. So all of a sudden, loans and other debt or obligations, financial obligations, have become toxic to the banks, and they had to readjust certain assets in the balance sheets. So this is what's happening now. And the issue right now is that the central banks are in a kind of very difficult situation. On one side, they have to fight inflation. And the other side, the more they raise interest rates, the more problematic the situation will become in the banking sector. And so this is a reason why we're seeing what I believe is the beginning of another financial crisis, a collapse of the existing banking system, which I believe will happen this year and the next years and so on. So we will see this happen because in the end, since the last financial crisis, not much has changed. The system is basically still the same. The thresholds and the security buffers are a bit higher. So it's probably a bit more stable than it was 15 years ago. But essentially, the system has remained unchanged. All right, I like this quote from George Santayana, who said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat this," then, because this is what I think is happening now in the financial sector. But let's talk about our reports. And here we have a bit, we have very positive numbers. So the first quarter of 2023 was another record quarter for Neco. So we have a record price potential as well. We had record revenue. Our donations also reached a new record. Thank you so much for your generosity. And we also had a record in terms of reserves. So our reserves have climbed above the €500,000 mark, and I'm really happy about that. That shows that our system has become more and more stable over the last quarters. So the Neco dashboard is what we publish every month with the latest and most important key performance indicators. The price currently at 91 cents is expected to go up in 2 days with the next regulations. So the price will be €1 or more, depending on which regulation option Collexa will decide to choose. Our price potential right now is at over €1.50. So the price potential is the maximum price that the Neco could have at a minimum reserve rate of 10%. Annual earnings over the last 12 months, we had almost 70% in earnings. That's a really good result, especially compared to the market. And the reserve rate of currently, actually, I think it's around 18% right now, right of today. You see our Neco price over the last 3 years. It's been going up in a very stable fashion. Lately, it has been picking up in speed. And our triple bottom line, also as usual, very positive. When we look at the market, what happened in the first quarter, because of the issues in the fiat sector, so with the euro and the dollars and the finance, the trouble in this traditional finance world, we have seen an increase in interest in crypto. So Bitcoin has gained, I think, 30 to 40% in value over the last quarter. In general, over the last 12 months, it's still negative, as you see here, in terms of profitability. But the market has recovered lately as people are moving away from fiat and more into crypto. However, what has remained unchanged is that the volatility of the crypto world is quite high. So Bitcoin still around 30% average monthly volatility. And this is where our strength lies. Our volatility has remained under our target of 5% average monthly volatility. So pretty much the same level as gold and euro. And if you look at the profitability again, so you see the only major currency out there that has been profitable over the last 12 months is actually gold, if you consider gold a currency. But that is only before inflation. So we've had 10% inflation. So subtract 10%, and then even gold would be negative. So even if you invest in gold, you would have lost value because the price inflation is actually higher. And the only currency where you would not experience the negative effects of actually losing value is Neco, with our profitability of currently 69%. We have never had loss ever since, and our market capitalization has gone up, another record. So we are now above $3 million in market capitalization. The token performance over the last 3 years, you see every quarter, more or less, we have now really a steady growth. And this growth in the Neco price is actually supported by an increase in our reserve, which is the gray bars here. So it's the reserve in absolute numbers, which is currently around 500,000 euros. And the line here is the reserve rate, so the ratio between our money supply and our and the reserve. The chart up here shows the Neco price, the blue line. So this is where the price currently is, and the price potential, the red line, which shows where the price could already be. So the Neco is still undervalued. We're currently under €1, but it could be even above €1.50. And this is what we want. This is one of the reasons why Neco is so stable. So first of all, it's a currency that does not create bubbles. Right. So if the like Bitcoin and most other currencies, they go up when demand goes up. So more demand means increased price. Neco only increases in price if the reserve increases, and that is important to understand. So there's actually an increase in the value behind the currency. So imagine when we started at a price of 35 cents in 2020, every Neco token was backed up by, at that point, 10% in reserve. So behind every Neco token were 3.5 euro cents in reserves. Right now, we are at a price of 91 cents per token and a reserve rate of currently 18%. So every Neco token is backed up by around 20 euro cents in reserve. So almost, nearly 6 times as much as in 2020. So that explains why there is a reason why the price has gone up, because there's actually more value behind. However, it still isn't the maximum. The price could be much higher. And that's a good thing about our collective intelligence. Collexa always keeps the actual price under the price potential. And that creates this buffer and this additional stability, but also it reduces volatility. If you look at the red bar has a lot higher volatility, much larger ups and downs than the blue bar. And the blue bar is actually the result of the collective intelligence of all of us quarterly coming together and voting on the different regulation options. So this is what differentiates us from all the other cryptocurrencies, and especially from fiat, the reserve system. So most of cryptocurrencies are not backed up by anything, and the same with all the fiat currencies. There's no backup, there's no gold standard. And this is what we implemented through our reserve system. It's, on one side, the reserve is an exchange, so it provides the possibility to exchange Neco tokens for fiat, but it also serves as a provider for liquidity, stability, and security. And only if the reserve rate is above 12%, then the price can go up. So this is the basic. But in the end, the price is not determined by such a mathematical function, or is not determined automatically, but rather regulated on a quarterly basis through our collective intelligence. And so another very important thing, so people ask me, what happens if the euro crashes? We've seen this last year. The euro actually went down at the end of the last year. If you look at the chart, euro versus US dollar, we've had a period where the euro went down from $1.20 to less than $1 actually. But that didn't affect us. What we did on our side, we shifted our euro reserves into the US dollar. So we kept very little reserve, mostly it was US dollar. And through this shift, our reserve actually increased because we measure our reserves in euro as our reserve or reference currency. So that created an increase in our reserve. And when the trend changed the beginning or end of last year, when suddenly the euro increased in value again, we shifted again. So now most of our reserves are in euro, and they have increased in value again compared to US dollar. So this is how we can balance things out. And our reserve is decentralized. It's not just one reserve, not one bank account. Actually, we have 4 banks. We have bank accounts in 3 different currencies: pounds, euros, and dollars. And these accounts, bank accounts, are owned by different legal entities and will in future also be spread across different countries. So, for example, now we're also affected by the banking crisis. One of our banking partners, Fido Bank, is going to close this year. They're not going to go bust or collapse. It's they have decided to discontinue the operations because of unsuccessful business. So there is no risk for us, but we've already decided to move our reserves that were held with Fido Bank out into our other bank accounts. So this decentralization is very important for the stability of the system and helps us to balance all these, changes that are happening in the world right now. Right, if you compare Neco versus other currencies, one thing that you will notice in this chart, it's called the candlestick chart. If you look at the left side, the Neco chart, you see only blue candlesticks, means only increase. The white candlesticks are a decrease over the months. These are on a monthly basis. If you compare to the other fiat currencies like euro or dollar, you will see that they had periods of loss and gain. If you compare to other cryptocurrencies, here are the main cryptocurrencies: Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Binance. They had some periods of positive and negative, but in general, they have a very high volatility. The volatility is visible when you look at the size of these bars. The big up and down means high volatility. And this is one thing we wanted to avoid. So here you see a very different chart of the Neco compared, especially to the crypto world. When you look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance, you'll probably recognize that these charts have quite some similarity. They're following the same pattern. And we see this throughout the crypto world. So regardless of what a cryptocurrency does, the ups and downs follow the cycle of the market. So the market is dictating the price of these tokens, not so much the actual token itself and what the companies behind the token do. And this is also a thing that differentiates us. We are not driven by the ups and downs of the market. We have our own rhythm, and we follow our internal collective intelligence and our progress in terms of reserves. All right, a bit more numbers, guys. We're always done with numbers. I don't want to bore you with too much numbers, but what you see here is things are looking good. So we had a record revenue last quarter. Members have increased. Money supply has increased. Market capitalization has increased. Our triple bottom line is positive, also a little less than last year. We have these cycles throughout the year. So usually the best quarter is the second quarter of a year, and the last quarter of a year is the least successful. So we're seeing this again every year. So this seems to be like a cycle that we're gonna expect in the future again. But overall, it's all very, very positive. So what's currently happening, we have our referendum ongoing. So by tomorrow, you have to submit your responses if you haven't done so. On Saturday, the 15th, the new price of the Neco will come in effect. The price will be somewhere between €1 and €1.07. So that's a plus of roughly 10 to 18%. And these are the 5 different options that are available for collective voting. In this referendum, everyone can give their rating for each of the five options, and the option with the highest collective rating will win. Just a few people often ask me, how do we calculate these options? So the first one, Collexa, this is based on the collective average of the community over the last 12 months. So this is more or less like, the last 12 months continued. And then the other 4 options are options that we calculated, that we prepared, where we put more emphasis on either people, planet, profit, or reserve. And they're always calculated through. So one reason why, for example, people and planet are currently quite low is because we don't need much more. It's already more budget than we would probably ever need based on the current allowances. So the system is really quite efficient. On the planet side, I would love to put more towards the planet, but we're currently prototyping with one partner. They are reforesting in Indonesia and Uganda, and even though their capacities have just increased by another 25% in the last year, they still don't have the capacity to offset the entire carbon footprint that we would be able to offset with the budget that we currently have. But once we go public, this will change, and then we will be more efficient. Not more efficient, more effective. All right, guys. So this would be maybe a good chance for everyone to ask any questions if you have any. And regarding the numbers, before I continue with the rest. So if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Happy to respond. Doesn't seem like there is any question. Okay, well then I'll continue. We leave the numbers behind and come to a topic which may be more important than numbers: happiness. I want to share a quick story about this quote and how I, in my life, realized that, it's actually, happiness is more about wanting what you have than having what you want. Like about 10 years ago, I had sold my last company and I lived in San Francisco, having pretty much all the luxury I wanted at that point of time. But I realized that it didn't really increase my happiness so much. I still had to deal with a lot of issues and repairs and stuff. And so I decided to sell everything, including my car, my apartment, and everything. And since then, I've been a digital nomad. And all my possessions are pretty much a backpack for my clothes, a backpack for my computer, one for my paraglider, and one for a scuba gear. And that's all I have right now. But I've never been happier in my life before. So for me, getting rid of stuff actually increased my happiness. And when you look at our community happiness index and how we calculate it, it kind of shows exactly what I was talking about. So the community happiness index is one of our key performance indicators and one of our main goals at Neco. So over a long term, we want to increase the happiness of our community by coming up, but first of all, identifying where we can improve and how, and then determining the programs that help bringing up the happiness of our community over time. So the Community Happiness Index was inspired by the country of Bhutan, a kingdom that introduced happiness about 15 years ago. So they replaced gross domestic product, GDP, or Bruttosozialprodukt, as we say in German, by this indicator. So where they measure true happiness. And they decided to divide it into 9 domains that you see here. These are exactly the same domains, and measure them. There's another happiness indicator, which is the World Happiness Report, which was also recently released. But that is a very different report. It's based on 6 indicators. One of them is, for example, gross domestic product per capita. So again, they're measuring money and an absence of corruption. So I looked into both indicators and I found that the Bhutanese system resonated more with me because it is more diverse and brings in a lot more parameters than the World Happiness Poll. But the big difference between the Community Happiness Index and Bhutan system is in our happiness index, everyone has a subjective rating of how important each domain is for the overall happiness. So it's not one calculation that is the same for everyone. It's a very subjective indicator where every person can say, for me, for example, health is more important than governance, as an example. And that determines your individual happiness and together determines the community happiness index of our community. So our Chi is currently at 67%, so has remained unchanged from last year, same level. We see, again, very similar structure. The happiest part for our community is personal well-being. So people are really happy about that, followed by living standard, health. Yeah, even in times of Corona, health was pretty high, the happiness. But the areas where people are most unhappy about are governance and, last but not least, environment. And environment has even decreased. So happiness has gone down by 2%, now at happiness of 45%. So this really shows that people are more and more concerned about the environment. But the G also gives us 2 other very important indicators. One is the importance. So here we measure how important is a certain domain for your personal happiness. And we see, again, that health and well-being are the most important factors, but environment is already on number 3, even before living standard. That's super interesting. So people find that it's more important to have a good environment than their living standard for the personal happiness. And governance, on the other side, is the least important. So even though we spend so much time talking about governance, actually for the happiness, it's not such an important topic. So when you combine these 2, the happiness in an area or deficiency in one area with the importance, you create another indicator which we call the urgency. So urgency means where is the most pressing need right now to increase happiness. And so you see urgency, again, most important or most urgent topic is environment, followed by governance, followed by health. And so this helps us to tell us as an organization, okay, we need to focus on the environment first. That's why our carbon offset program has priority. Governance, you probably know this is an issue we might address a bit more in the future with Collexa. When we roll out Collexa, we want to have global referendums, global decisions. Using Collexa as a kind of global parliament, dealing with the governance issues we are expecting, and then health maybe later. Yeah, this shows again how we can utilize all this information from the community happiness survey to determine and prioritize certain projects and initiatives in our community. All right, almost done. So roadmap. There's another update. So it might look the same, but we have changed another number here. We have postponed our initial coin offering to 2024. I think most of you already kind of, I think last time already indicated that it's currently hard to say when we will be able to do the ICO. Reason being mostly the legal situation right now. The European Parliament is hopefully going to pass the new EU crypto regulation next week. So we will finally have a harmonized crypto regulation in the European Union, which was super important because of the tremendous effort and differences between the countries in terms of crypto regulation. So it was really, really challenging to identify how to launch Neco if there's no harmonized crypto regulation. And so this is now a very important step for us. If that law is passed, then we have a solid legal basis for all the countries in the United States, in the EU. And we expect that this law will be a bit of the blueprint for other crypto laws in the world. So that this is a great opportunity for us. However, we are in the EU, which means when it's passed by the European Parliament, it takes about another year until it's implemented in all the countries in national law. That's why we believe that our ICO will be sometime in 2024. Currently working with a couple of lawyers on a legal roadmap, so I can maybe give a bit more detail in our next session. But that's just for you guys to know. The Neco ICO 2024, and then the other ICOs, TechGen and Collexa, will follow the years afterwards. Even though we haven't, for the legal reasons, reached out to larger impact investors, we are coming closer to reaching our milestone goal for the funding. So we're currently at 60% of the target funding for our build stage. So looking very good. Every quarter, we're adding another 10-20%. So I think, by the end of the year, we should definitely reach our target. And with €500,000 still in our reserve, on the financial side, everything is looking really good in our side, really stable, and enough money to now start all the legal procedures, which are costly, unfortunately. All right, as I said, 2 more days, guys, before the Neco price goes up. So if you want to put more money from your fiat bank accounts onto the safer side, have 1 more day time to do this. Otherwise, the new price will be effective on the 15th. And then we will take it from there. Very good. Before I go onto this last slide and talk a bit about about the last few topics, I want to give you guys a chance to speak up, ask questions if you do have any. No questions today.
One question.
Günther, yeah.
How many members are allowed before an ICO?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So it depends on the country. So we set our limit to 500. That was the limit for Malta and Germany. And we have like the numbers you've seen, like 700 something. This is the absolute numbers, includes accounts which are inactive. So only people who have registered. So we only count the active members, which we are currently around 450. So we have 50 seats left. That's why I stopped, doing marketing and pushing, and like, just, right now, even our increases in reserves come mostly from our existing investors putting more money in, which is great. Less work to do, but we have to be careful. As said previously, because we are not public, we can do public marketing, and so for these reasons, I've been slowing down. Also, we are still registered in Germany. I just 2 days ago, I was sitting with my tax advisor and looked at our numbers 2021. So Germany is not very efficient when it comes to tax. And we might have to pay 30% of every token that we sell right now. So that's why I didn't want to bring larger investors on board as well right now. So I want to wait until the legal part is set up, and that we have a country, probably Estonia, where we're not hit by so much tax. But yeah, so far 2021. Fortunately, due to accruals, we still don't have to pay much tax, but our profits are getting higher and higher and higher. So eventually for 2022 and 2023, we probably have to pay quite a lot of tax.
Did you compare all the opportunities going to the Baltics or to Liechtenstein or to the United Arab Emirates?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing right now. So I have done a quick overview myself. I have a few lawyers that are now going into every detail, but at the moment, it looks like we're going to have 4 legal entities to start. 2 will be in Estonia. The reason being that Estonia has 0% corporate income tax if you do not distribute profits. We do not distribute profits. We always keep them in reserve. So that's why this is a very good corporate income tax scheme. And it's a very advanced country in terms of e-governance. Then we have to also deal with the issue of liability of the collective. So to protect our members from liability that would arise from collective decision-making, we need to have what's called a REPA legal entity, which will probably be a foundation in Switzerland. And then the nonprofit will remain in Germany, where most of our members are right now. So 4 legal entities, 2 in Estonia, 1 in Switzerland, 1 in Germany. That's the plan. That is not finalized. My lawyers are still working out the legal roadmap. We have looked at the others too. Liechtenstein, Switzerland, yes. Malta, yes. United Arab Emirates, they have also been attracting a lot of business, but they just introduced 9% corporate income tax. So it's not as tax efficient as Estonia. And it's also the big advantage right now. Our core area is Europe. And with this new MiCA regulation, the crypto regulation, we have the chance to register in one country, obtain the license in one country, and then we can serve all the other countries in the European Union. So I believe that Europe is currently the best place to get started. And then we can grow into Asia. Dubai would maybe another good place for another legal entity. Singapore. As we go, probably when we move into other countries, we might have to add additional legal entities into our decentralized autonomous organization. So, yeah. And this is also the reason why things are taking so long, 4 legal entities and then all the licenses, all the people we need to have in there, compliance. So this is quite a challenging topic, but it's also very important that that we design it in a very safe way. You've seen what's happening in the United States, all these lawsuits against Binance and so on with the SEC. So it is a hot area where there is a lot of legal insecurities. So that's why it's very important for me to make sure that everything we do is compliant and on a solid legal basis.
The second question, Do you still believe that you need another million from a professional investor before you have enough money for the ICO?
Now we're already at 60%, so we only need 400,000 for the goal. I don't think that's an issue right now. We have plenty of money. The only downside is usually we pay all our partners in Neco, with the exception of lawyers. They are usually not that open, and also we want to prevent what's called we want to prevent paying them in Neco, because then they would maybe biased, because they depend on our currency. So we don't want to give that impression they're kind of bought into our system. So they need to be more independent. So for that reason, this means, there will be higher legal costs. Estonia is okay. Switzerland is very expensive. The hourly rates for lawyers there is far beyond what we have internally. But yeah, so we will need money for this. We also will need some money for the development. But I think, financially, even what we have now could already be sufficient. We're very efficient with our money. That's the very positive side. Yeah, but I still want to have this goal, like get to 1 million. It's only 40% left till we reach this milestone, and that would allow us, to do the rest for the ICO. But we've already started with the legal procedures. We are working on recruiting developers. We've just started to recruit for our HR circle recruiter and the circle lead for HR. So things are moving forward now on this side.
I recently discussed with the founder of Companisto to work together in fundraising for impact-oriented startups. I'm in this business. And I like their business model. They typically call first their business angels group, where each and everyone has to invest at least 10,000 euro. If this group brings 500,000 or 1 million, depending on the amount that should be raised, then they start open it for all the others. And they have 9,000 business angels in the network. That's a lot. And a huge number of private investors who can start with 250 euro. So I thought you probably could think about if a Companisto could be a good help, because if you get enough money, you probably can boost the development earlier. Time is important, I think.
Yes, absolutely. But the limiting factor right now is probably the regulation, the EU regulation, 2024.
Yes, okay, I understand.
So even if we develop fast, we're not going to be able to ICO before these laws are in place. So, it gives us time. And in general, like my preference is always like stability is one of our core values, not speed. So we want to make sure everything is tested before we launch it. So I'd rather go a bit slower, but making sure it is stable. But yeah, this is, I think, a very good idea. And thanks for sharing. If you could send me the link to the website, or if you want to get us in touch, then it would be appreciated.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Any more questions from the audience? Okay. A question about StackChain. Someone asked, can you please talk about StackChain? Oh, yeah. StackChain. So StackChain, the idea came from a necessity, actually. When I started Neco, I looked at the blockchain as a technology, and I realized it doesn't scale, and it wouldn't fit to our values because of the the extreme amount of energy that was consumed. So this is why we start to think of an alternative, stack chain. And what is it? It's a carbon neutral blockchain technology, and so it doesn't require mining, and it's very efficient. It's run right now completely with renewable energy, so there is no carbon emissions. We're not even just offsetting. No, we're actually not having any emissions, and it's very efficient. It doesn't require, so sending money doesn't require more energy than sending an email. So super efficient. It's highly secure. It's a different architecture compared to a blockchain. A blockchain is essentially a file where you can add new transactions to the file, but you can't change anything below, giving it this thing of immutability. And then it's decentralized, so it's synchronized across multiple nodes across the internet. But unfortunately, file technology, guys, is a technology from the last century. It's super, super slow. And that's why most of these blockchains, be it Bitcoin or even Ethereum, are super slow. They don't scale. They wouldn't be able to handle millions of transactions per day. So today in our world, in our IT world, and where I come from in cloud, we use databases. And so StackChain is a decentralized database, a different architecture. Right now, we have a prototype that we use internally. We're going to build this to a proper platform. And then when we feel it's ready, we will bring it out to the market as an additional product. So like Ethereum, imagine Neco, our first ICO, that's the token. Neco is something, the green Bitcoin. And then StackChain will be a green and more efficient version of Ethereum, a platform for other companies to run their own tokens. So they can tokenize whatever they want to tokenize, but also a platform that helps you to decentralize IT infrastructure. So this is StackChain. Does this answer your question? Good. Then I will jump back into the presentation. Give me a second, because there's one more slide left. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So other topics I wanted to mention, our safety features. I think I've explained before. Why do we not have to worry about our money and our reserve? And it's still, our reserves are still in euros mostly, or in fiat currencies. They're still with other banks. And here are, as I mentioned before, the reasons: because our reserve is decentralized. We have multiple banks. We have accounts in multiple currencies across multiple legal entities. And each of these bank accounts is protected by a public protection scheme and also usually by a private protection scheme. So even if one of these banks go bankrupt, our money isn't lost. Then we have a minimum reserve of 10%, so there's always enough in our reserve. And we have what's called a zero debt policy. Our company is not allowed to have any debts or financial obligations. That's why we don't even have credit cards, right? So that is the issue. You can only go bankrupt, if you are in debt. If you never take debt, you will never go bankrupt. More or less, that's at least the thinking. So a zero debt policy means we only start doing things when we have enough money. And so that's why it's also important, as you've seen before, with the roadmap and our budgets, our funding goals. So we don't start development, for example, before we have the money for the particular part of development. So we get the money first, and then we start developing. A lot of other companies do the other way around. They start developing and they use debt or other things. They don't have the money yet. So our approach is the other way around. We only start once we have the money. Yes, collective versus artificial intelligence. So March, another big news was ChatGPT, one of the best artificial intelligence programs in the world in terms of communication. It can write articles for you, you can do a lot of things, and it's accessible by the public. So we're seeing this AI has become a lot more of a topic now for each and every individual. We're also probably going to use it a bit in our organization. But we have something on the other side which has been neglected by the market over the last years, collective intelligence. There's not much out there in terms of collective intelligence. It's a kind of a niche that helps us with our product, Collexa, which is a collective intelligence, to go to the market and cover this area. And collective intelligence has a few advantages over artificial intelligence. So because it is essentially humans, collective intelligence will never turn against humans, right? With artificial intelligence, if you remember movies like The Matrix and recent warnings by others like Elon Musk, who actually asked for stop in development. So artificial intelligence is something we have to also be careful how we use it. It can cause a lot of problems. And so collective intelligence could be an answer to this. But recently, we have seen what artificial intelligence can do in terms of manipulation. Our CHI survey, Community Happiness Survey, was kind of hacked or spammed by an artificial intelligence who submitted submissions. But it was a computer program. It was not from individuals. We noticed, so we had about over 2,000 submissions for the Community Happiness Index. Because it was a public poll, we allowed everyone to participate, even non-Neco members. So we filtered them out by just removing all the responses that did not come from our members. So this was the first time that we actually had to deal with an artificial intelligence trying to manipulate our CHI. Here it's really important at Neco, we want to make sure that only real people have access to our platform in our CHI, no bots, and no computer programs, because they can cause a lot of trouble. If you look at other platforms like social media, Facebook and so on, where bots do a lot of damage also already. We don't want that. We want to make sure that in our community, only real humans have a vote. Another topic that has recently come up, again, UBI rules, it's actually not that new, but I just want to repeat, when you're using your universal basic income, if you make transfers over 500 Necos or more, please attach a receipt, like an invoice or any proper receipt, please. This is required. Then also ask no excessive payments, tips, or donations. So keep in mind, UBI should be used as it is, your own money. So you wouldn't give, some friend 2,000 euros just for fun. But sometimes this is the way people try to treat the UBI. Right now, most people have collected UBI. Most of our UBI stacks are actually full, and people want to use it. But please keep in mind that every Neco is backed up by a certain amount of money in our reserve. So it's not that it's money that's from nowhere. It is based on money from our investors. So please also treat that money as if it was your money and don't waste it. Huh? So it's, it is important that it's our community who has created this money, and it's our investors who have put money into reserve. Only this reserve money has enabled us to create additional tokens that we can use for UBI. So try to think of it as it is the same as your money. It's the same as Neco, and treat it properly. Carbon-free tax. So we have the idea of offsetting our carbon emissions and people taking responsibility for their own carbon footprint of the year. We have increased our carbon price to 25 euro per ton of carbon for the last year. So the rates have gone up a little bit. So the standard rate is 250 euros per year, vegetarians 200, and frequent flyer is 375. And unfortunately, still it's the amount of people in our community that have offset their carbon footprint through this program is still only a few %. So I would like to see more of you supporting this. You can earn karma on the long term. It's a good investment because the more karma you have, the more universal basic income. But also in general, the karma token is a loyalty token in our system. that will give you early access to certain features. And you will have preferred access to when we roll out, for example, our new healthcare system or whatever, then we will roll it out based on karma. So the more karma you have, the better for you in the future, right? So I would love to see more people paying the carbon-free tax, if you can. And again, I think it's a donation, even if you feel like you can't pay the 250, you can still donate just 100. It's fine, we understand. That's the beauty of the free tax system. If you feel it's too much for you, you can also donate less. Last but not least, I think I promised this in our last Neco Community Conference, set up a WhatsApp community group for Neco. I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to do this in the next days. So I'll send out an invite to this group, and then you can join. And in this group, we will have this group where people can ask questions and where we can share ideas, because I feel like, WhatsApp is a better platform for our community to exchange ideas than email. Yes, so this is it from my side. Any questions in our community?
Well, from my side, I think WhatsApp has some problems if the group is big. I am in a couple of big WhatsApp groups with hundreds of not seen posts because the groups are so large. It's the same for TTI, it's the same for Catalyst 2030, for example. And insofar, I typically don't visit groups that are big. For such a communication, probably other tools would be helpful, or other platforms. I can send you an invite to one that I would prefer.
Yep.
It is a Swiss-based group with impact investors. It is not that big.
Yeah. So we asked the question in our last session where we offered the choice between WhatsApp and Telegram, and the community decided for WhatsApp because most of them have it. And I realized the way I communicate with most people in our community is through WhatsApp.
Really?
Also have Telegram. Personally, I don't mind. I actually would prefer Telegram because WhatsApp is part of Meta. They have also updated their system with WhatsApp communities, so they have fixed some of the issues with larger communities. You can break it down. I think right now, I will have two groups. One is for a group of people with high karma levels, and one is a generic. So we have a bit of a more, I wouldn't say elite group, but the people who are more involved.
Yeah.
A special group, a smaller group, which doesn't get overloaded with chats, and then one for everyone, so everyone has the right to join one of the groups.
That sounds like a good solution.
Thanks, Günther. Thanks for the feedback. All right, any other questions?
I have another question around, it's a completely different topic. It's about the legal form. So I heard about that you are a Genossenschaft, or you have an eingetragener Verein right now. So I just want to hear you. What's the legal form you choose now, and how you want to go into the future?
Yeah, we're a decentralized organization. The cooperative model is, the Genossenschaft is the model that fits best with us. So in general, like, these are the principles that we have implemented in our organization, and our for-profits will probably be cooperatives. The non-profits will remain associations. So currently, we have the non-profit is an association, and the for-profit is a limited, a German limited. But what I would like to have is a system where the nonprofits are usually associations. Then we have the for-profits, cooperatives, and a foundation, Stiftung, in Switzerland for the management of our DAO. This is currently the idea. Both the cooperative and the association fit very well with our hierarchy management model and our distribution of power. Yeah? In every legal entity, we have a distribution of power, an executive board, a supervisory board, and the collective, Collexa, or the membership. And these work perfectly with a cooperative, because that's actually every cooperative has these three. A association has to have two of them, so we added the third one, the supervisory board, so it also works. And a foundation is structured in a very similar way. But there might be, like, we also will have a development organization for the development of stack chain. That could be just a normal limited. The only thing, I don't like the idea of a shareholder model. We don't want to have a company owned by a few people. We want the company to be owned by everyone. So everyone owns it and everyone has one vote, regardless of how money they put in. And this is exactly the principle of a cooperative. So that's why I prefer this. The issue is, again, legal parts. Most lawyers don't have enough experience with cooperatives, especially abroad. In Germany, it's more popular, but in other countries, not so much. There's a legal entity or legal form called the Società Europea Cooperativa, SCE. It's a European cooperative, a very good form, but unfortunately completely unknown. So there's not a lot of people who have experience with that. That would be the ideal form for our Estonian legal entity. But I have to, wait until my lawyers come back on this form, on this topic.
I've some idea in the context of a cooperative. I supported a startup, German Kenyan startup, which is offering a software as a service, as a full banking system for SACCOs. The so-called SACCOs are the cooperative banks in sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay.
And they raised together about 7 million in seed funding and are growing very fast, have a lot of clients. And this probably could be a system to be used if Neco is growing very fast or is growing big. What do you think about that?
You mean using their system?
Using a full banking system for SACCOs, yes, for cooperatives.
Yeah, so we have our own technology called the stack chain, and we are not a bank. So that's very important. We want to stay out of the bank. We do not want to be a bank, because when we are considered a bank, then we would fall under the banking regulation. And this would be exactly what we don't want. Then we would be part of the old system that's collapsing and affected by them. This was one of the reasons why we decided not to do Switzerland for the token. Because for the token, we would have been classified more or less like a security token, would have to go through the same regulation like a bank. And that is overkill. And that also means we are in the same space as Credit Suisse and UBS. And that's where we don't want to be. So that's why we have our own technology. And it's quite different from existing because it's decentralized. I don't know about your startup, but it's probably more towards centralized banking. And there's a huge difference between those two.
Idea.
Yeah. But thank you for the idea. Thank you for sharing. Guys, I see we're 10 minutes over our time, but that's perfect. I always appreciate all your questions and you guys being part of our community conference. So thanks very much for attending. Thank you all for your support over the last quarter again. I'm really happy that this quarter was another positive quarter, another records. So let's keep it up this way. And and make sure that our next community conference in June will be with positive numbers again, as in this one. So wish you all a happy week and a good weekend. It's almost weekend. And I'll see you soon. And keep in mind, on Saturday, actually, you'll get a message that that's the date where the new price will kick in. And we will communicate the results from the Collexa referendum. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.